and this was your text. Being a husband, father, and business owner all at once, and the emotional intelligence and vulnerability it takes to be successful at all three.
So fast forward to the age of 24. I'm getting married to my beautiful wife, and then fast forward a few years into that, and she's kind of realizing like, man, why doesn't he validate me? Why doesn't he comfort me? Why doesn't he do this or that? You don't do this, you don't do that. And so I had realized that my emotional intelligence was almost non-existent as a husband.
Welcome to the Elevate Utah podcast. I'm your host, Court Brady, and today we have Travis Milward. Bro, I've been so freaking pumped to have you on here.
Thanks, Court. Looking forward to it, man.
Travis is an insurance broker. Awesome things coming. I won't go into all the other details of what your title will include in the future. But it's for Insurance Office of America. Yeah. You've been our guy for 5 or 6 years at Aspen. We've loved working with you. You're one of my favorite people. So
thanks,
I'm
man.
super stoked for this episode. I hit you up and said, hey, what are you passionate about? Feel expert in? You said, dude, I feel passionate about this. I don't know if I feel expert in it. I'm still learning. Yeah. But I got excited when I saw what you texted over to me, and this was your text. Being a husband, father, and business owner all at once, and the emotional intelligence and vulnerability it takes to be successful at all three. So again, you said I'm not an expert, but definitely learning. I'm just curious, like, why this topic?
Yeah, we got some time here.
We got time. Let's go. Yeah.
Let's see. The topic has definitely been I'm a work in progress, but the last couple of years this has really surfaced to the top for me, especially my marriage, and then with the changes professionally. And so it really stems back to my childhood. The best that I've come up with is that something happened as a senior in high school. So my parents got divorced when I was a senior, and that news got broke to me, and it caught me off guard. It rocked my world. And being as young as I was and not knowing this, I think what happened subconsciously is that I shut everything off emotionally, and that just kind of snowballed more and more as I grew up. So fast forward to the age of 24. I'm getting married to my beautiful wife, and then fast forward a few years into that, and she's kind of realizing like, man, why doesn't he validate me? Why doesn't he comfort me? Why doesn't he do this or that? And so we had 6 kids within 10 years, and so there wasn't a whole lot of like processing during that. It was just survival. And so coming out of that later in our marriage is when Mary started to kind of articulate and share, like, I feel lonely, you don't do this, you don't do that. And so I had realized that my emotional intelligence was almost non-existent as a husband. And it was maybe 2022 is when I began to dive pretty deep into what I needed to do to save my marriage and develop the emotional intelligence that I needed. So
that surprises me. Not from the fact that I think every single entrepreneur deals with this.
Yeah.
Like, how do I be a husband, a father, a contributing member of my community or church, and also show up at work where the buck stops with me? Yeah. And a lot of people rely on me to get the job done. So I'm not surprised from that side. I am surprised from the side you just never know what people are going through.
Yeah.
Because the first time I met you, I was just like, oh, dude, Travis Milward. Just like stoked, pumped, jazzed on life, happy-go-lucky, confident, not a care in the world. I remember when we had our Entrepreneurs Organization forum at your office. Yeah. And you hosted us, you brought in lunch, you chatted, and I was just like, oh, dude, this is the guy. Like, I wasn't a client at that point and quickly became a client after. And so from that side, you just never know what people are going through. I'm curious, can you break down like just the components of the statement that you made, emotional intelligence and vulnerability?
Yeah.
Like, let's start with emotional intelligence. What is that?
Definitely not the person to ask that question. It's, spending some time in EO, like you got to tap into that emotional spectrum. And, if my mom asked me what I felt about something, I don't know if I could even answer the question. I'd be like, I don't know. So I believe emotional intelligence, for me is just having the ability to know, one, how I'm feeling and what I'm going through. And I've learned some stuff from going through Tony Robbins, just kind of like managing my emotional state and being aware of that. And then another aspect is being aware of my wife's emotional state. You know, what have I done to upset her, or what have I not done, or how I may have neglected her. And then it kind of rolls into, you know, being aware of my children and their emotional state. And so as I've kind of been learning this and developing it, it's also benefited me on the professional side. So working with my support staff, working with clients, and there's a few tools, simple tools that I've learned we can talk about more later from my adventures of 2022 and 2023 is when I signed up for 2 different programs about 6 months apart. That was more of a deep dive work on myself and how I can grow, develop, and become a better husband and a better father. Because my belief is that most men, entrepreneurial men, we're really good at grinding. We get stuff done. We put in the hours, almost too many hours. And then what's left over for our wife and our kids is not much. And it's sad. It's unfortunate. And at the end of the day, it's like, what am I working towards? You know, am I going to build this successful business at the expense of my family and then lose the relationships with my wife and kids? Or is there a happy medium where I can achieve what I want to accomplish, yet be the husband and the father that I need to be?
Had you gone through the mental work and emotional work of saying, what does success look like for Travis Milward?
Yeah, I have a good idea now. I'd say back in 2021 when I was at that was the 13th year at my family business, I had kind of given up on some aspirations and just kind of chopped it up and said, hey, I guess this is the way it's going to be. You know, I got to clock in to an office every day, and I'm really not going to make the amount of money that I'd like to make, and was kind of like settling. And that's coming from the real estate crash. So back in 08, 09, when I was in real estate at the time, it was kind of like a gig with me and a buddy, and we were doing some investments, and that all came to a screaming halt. The real estate market crashed, and lost everything, moved my family to Detroit. Spent a year there in an effort to maintain what we had. We had a few rental properties out there. Nothing came together. Banks weren't loaning or financing anything. And I was really stubborn, had a chip on my shoulder, and I considered myself as like self-employed. And I wasn't willing to step down and go get a job. And so I put my family in a very bad spot. We were on food stamps, Medicare. And as an individual, I was more than broken, mentally, emotionally, especially financially. And so fast forward 13 years, what I was trying to avoid was that. And I was like, you know what? This is decent. It's reoccurring, predictable income. I'm providing for my family, but there is something more that I want. But I was like, I don't think that's going to be in the cards for me until everything changed in 2022.
In 2022, you went through this process. Like, did it get, I think most times in life, I think about this all the time, life is sometimes not bad enough that we like take action to go and solve it, to go and fix it. What happened in 2022? We were like, okay, it's time. You signed up for 2 different groups. You started going on this journey, this genesis for you.
I guess there's 2 different things going on at the same time. There's the professional stuff, and then there's the personal, emotional intelligence stuff. So on the professional side, so at the end of 2021, I had made a goal that I wanted to produce 3 times what I've never produced in a single year. And new clients. And then February of 22 is when my father's like, hey, I've decided that I'll be giving the agency to your brother 100% at some point in the future. And that's when I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to stick around. I'm going to leave. And I had a business coach at the time, and we were talking through what transpired a few months later. And he's like, do you realize what happened here? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. He's like, dude, you released into the universe that you wanted to produce 3 times what you'd never done. And the environment and the infrastructure you had at the time was not able to support you in those endeavors. So it all had to change. And I was like, holy crap, man. But going back to what you said, Court, which is like a very fond topic of mine that I guess makes me angry and happy at the same time, is that I believe that myself and most people have a whole nother gear when their back's against the wall, but they're unable to tap into that gear unless they're forced into it. And so that's what happened to me professionally, is like I I had walked away from what I had built. I attempted to purchase it. That didn't really go the way that I wanted it to. And so I was like, the gloves are coming off and I'm going to go do what I have to do to provide for my family. And it's really interesting what we're capable of when we have to dig in a little bit deeper and find that next gear.
Do you have any insights on, like, I'm loving the idea of, oh, how do I tap into this next gear?
Yeah.
I almost always see myself as, I would like to, that abundance mindset of running towards joy, running towards happiness, running towards pleasure. But when your back's against the wall, you're running from pain, you're running from prison, you're running from the potential lost marriage, lost relationships, lost house. You're running away from those potential pains that are imminent. How do you bring that to your operating system when you're not currently in a situation where your back's against the wall?
I don't think I have the answer to that question because I haven't done that myself. That every time I'm going into the next gear, there's a force upon me where I'm having to do that. I know some people that have reached a certain amount of success and they just keep going and going and going, and I'm just like, where does that come from? Why do they have that? And is it even necessary? Like, you have more than enough, and why are you still grinding? So, but yeah, my experience is more like that was the first one. And now I'm kind of into my second phase, which is a similar situation on rebuilding my business. But I have now purchased my book and I have my clientele, but now I've taken out a loan for that purchase. And so now it's like, okay, I got to grow dramatically, and I got to be intentional and strategic, because the clients that I brought on in the past, I can't just keep doing more of the same. I've got to write larger size accounts and stack those to go after and accomplish what I need to go accomplish.
Dude, this has been awesome. So thinking through your process of the journey, like, can you give me like play by play how you were showing up or not showing up emotionally, and what you did to operate in your business, for your family, as a father?
Yeah. So I guess to my detriment, I thought things were pretty good in our marriage.
They have this spectrum where if you ask a husband, scale of 1 to 10, how's your marriage doing? And how you ask the wife, scale of 1 to 10, how's your marriage? There's a delta of like 3 points. Like, a guy will say a 7, the wife will say a 4. A guy will say an 8, wife will say a 5. Almost always. My wife's,
super high on the spectrum of emotional intelligence. I feel like most women are. They're pretty well tapped in on that. And there's some guys that probably crush it. I think most guys, don't. They're just like, yeah, I'm good to hang out, have dinner and whatever. And the wife's like, my wife was feeling lonely, wanted more emotional connection, needed me to validate her more. There's all kinds of stuff. And so really when the straw that broke the camel's back was just, my marriage was on the verge of just falling apart. And I quickly realized that, hey, there's some pretty big issues here that I haven't addressed, and it starts with me. And so I signed up with an organization called The Powerful Men. The first phase was like 2.5 months. I got on a call once a week for an hour and a half, 2 hours with a coach, and then maybe 6 or 7 other men. It was like an online course. So it's like they gave us homework, but the homework was intense. I felt like I was in college.
Like what? What was some of the homework?
Dude, I don't know if I can remember, but a lot of writing. And towards the end of that, they had a thing called a clean slate letter. And so that's a letter that I wrote to my wife, just kind of addressing all the stuff that I've done in the past and just wanting to establish a clean slate going forward, and seeing her and validating her and all this stuff. But yeah, tons of homework. On top of, business, family, wife, kids, everything else. And so it was a lot, but it was a good starting point for me. And at the end of that, they offered up phase 2, which is called the Alpha Reset. I signed up for that, went up to Bend, Oregon in January. So it was pretty cold, quite a bit of snow, and spent close to 5 days up there. So I think 3 core days, and then the 2 days on the beginning and the end on traveling. And that experience alone changed my life. I don't say that very lightly. There's not a whole lot of stuff that I've experienced that's changed my life, but that was probably the most unique, life-changing experience I've ever had, and kind of gave me the ability to heal and also to learn and to grow and kind of move into the husband, father that I need to be.
What was that? Can you share what that process was? Like life changing. You don't use it lightly.
Yeah.
3 days to change your life. What did you guys go through?
Lots of things. One experience was they invited us to go outside and kind of ask the question to yourself of like, crossing the threshold of like, hey, who do I want to be and where do I want to go? And so we all went outside and just did this individually and thought about that. And then whenever it felt right for you, you would step forward and imagine yourself, stepping into who you need to be and processing that. And so I did that. And then you're going to think this is probably pretty weird, but I really I enjoy animals. I love animals. And after that experience, I thought to myself, I'm like, I want to see a bird right now. I'm not sure why. I just want to see something like that. So I'm looking around, I can hear birds in the distance. There's nothing like significant. And then they call us back into the cabin. And so as I'm walking back, I look up and I see this eagle, a bald eagle, beeline straight through the sky and just pumping his wings. And I'm looking up, I'm like, what are the odds of me seeing a bald eagle flying in the sky at this very moment? So they call it noble silence. So when we're not going through exercises or workshops and not sharing with one another, there's no talking with each other. And that allows us to like stay in it versus doing small talk and not having to think about like what's really going on. And so they turn on some cool music and they're like, hey, you guys need to go journal. And I actually posted on LinkedIn. I don't post a whole lot on LinkedIn, but I wrote up like a 1 or 2 pager of just that experience of the bald eagle and like what that represented for me. And it had a lot to do with like the person that I wanted to become. I could probably pull it up and find it, but it's like when I saw the bald eagle, it was like a representation of like he knew who he was, he knew where he was going, he knew what he wanted, and he wasn't gonna put up with anyone's crap, and he wasn't gonna go hang out with the chickens and peck on the ground. Like he was, an eagle up in the sky. He knew his worth, and so that was just like one of the cool experiences that I had.
Dude, thanks for sharing that. How has that manifested itself in your work? So it sounds like it's both work and relationship with Mary.
Everything ebbs and flows, right? Like there's a period of time where like I'm confident and I'm happy and I'm stoked, and then things will happen, whether it's personal or professional, and then I'll drop back down and be like, I'll be second guessing myself and not having the confidence and the energy that I want to have, and so I need to reset. But I guess the foundational piece is that I'm reaching higher and higher for my goals and aspirations, and I'm not second guessing myself. And I think the foundational piece for everyone is that if we don't believe, or if I don't believe in what I want to accomplish, then you're not going to accomplish it.
What does the reset look like for you when you are in those down moments and you say like, yeah, I need to reset? What do you do?
It varies. So like a happy place for me would be trail running with my dogs. So I did that this morning. I love to sweat. I love to get my lungs pumping. I get joy of seeing my dogs just run around and explore and have a good time. Seeing the sunrise, and I'm able to just think and process. So that'd be one way that I could just kind of reset.
If someone was listening to this and they were in the midst of, it's not bad enough, but it's like, hey, this is less than ideal, what would your recommendation be for them?
So after going through these experiences and being in these groups with other men and hearing their struggles, I was blown away by like what people are facing. One guy in particular was molested at a young age. Let's say 5 years old. He was living in a very rural area, so he's out playing in the forest with his brother. His brother jumps off something and hurts himself, something significant, and he's holding him in his arms, and he dies in his arms at the age of 9 or 10. And then fast forward, his perception of a happy, successful marriage is that he provides financially, which he did. He was crushing it financially. But his wife wasn't happy with things. Before that comes to a head, his son, who's 18, 19 years old, he's driving home. It's the wintertime. He gets in a little bit of a fender bender, gets hit in the head pretty good. He gets out of his car like he's not all there, and he gets lost, and he dies from the elements. Like, and I'm looking at this guy, and I've known him for like a day or two, and I have more respect than I've ever had for most people I've met just hearing this guy's story. And I'm like, how is this guy even standing right now? And so going back to what you said, like, yeah, everyone's going through stuff. And most of us don't even know a fraction of what that may be. But my point is that I'm hosting an event once a month. That's my goal. And it's not focused on business development. It's more on, I find quality people that I want to spend more time with that I don't see a ton. And so I host these events with an excuse for us to get together, because I feel like we work a ton. We try to have enough in our cup for our wife and our kids, and there isn't a whole lot of time that we take out for ourselves to fill our cup so we can be the husband and father and business owner that we need. So I think I kind of answered your question.
One more, just a different twist on it. If somebody is sitting there just like, yeah, my life is good, but I've let my dreams die.
Yeah.
I feel like most people's dreams die before they die. What do you recommend? What's
your
so
I guess to answer that in your original question, for me, I think for one, most men typically choose not to be vulnerable. Even their closest friends, they're not going to tell them like what's really happening with them or in their home or in business. And I think step one is you've got to let that go. And step two is, find a community, find another person, reach out to a friend, someone you trust, and like talk through it and share. And then if you need help, definitely seek out help. But I think that's the first step, is just talking to someone and expressing what's really going on. I can't stand people who are like, how are things going? It's like same old. Like, I'm like, drop the shit, dude. Like, what's really happening? Like, tell me what's going on. And especially if you've known someone for so many years, it's like, what are we doing here? Are we just walking around pretending to be happy and be fake? Like, what does that serve? So
I think suggesting that someone be vulnerable, I think, is the right path. I think it's much easier said than done. Things about my own path, especially as a business owner. Like, who do you be vulnerable to? Not your employees. Like, that doesn't work. It puts them in an awkward situation. And to come home and bring my work stuff to my wife and say like, hey, this is happening. Things happen so quickly in business, and my wife doesn't get the insight into all of the things that are changing. Like, hey, I'm going through this negotiation. It's going really poorly. She just hears that negotiation is going poor. It's with this person. Therefore, that person must be X, Y, and Z, and draws conclusions. And she doesn't have the full layout of like, well, then we had this conversation, and then he brought this forward, and now it's a really good negotiation. Like, I have a lot of respect for this person. She wasn't able to see that entire evolution. Yeah. And so I'm hesitant to bring stuff like that home to her. So like, I tried therapists. I have my own answer to this question, but I'm super curious of yours. I've gone to therapists, but they were less intentional about life than I was. And I was like, I think the messenger actually does matter when someone's just like, are they asking you good questions? Are they being helpful? It's like, but I don't feel understood by them because they aren't trying to maximize relationships, their health, their financial situation, make an impact on the world. They just have a job and some training. So can you go one more step on like, vulnerability is the first step, but some action items there.
Yeah, so kind of in line with what you're saying, Cord, is that can be fairly natural for some people and then very uncomfortable for others. And as far as action items go, I guess if you're on the scale of like, I don't really like to be vulnerable about anything, that's probably where you need to start. Is maybe you're gonna talk to a wall and just share like stuff you've never told people before. I'm just making this stuff up. But I think when it gets real is that if you are able to just, you don't have to go super vulnerable, but start with something and, call up a friend and be like, hey man, I got some stuff in my chest. I'd love to just talk and share some things with you. And that could be a starting point. But, I'd recommend just being with someone that you are very comfortable with and that you trust. But I agree with you. Like, going to your employees and just like spilling the beans, like that's not going to be effective. That's not an avenue that you'd want to go. And then, it also gets a little tricky with your wife as well. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can share with your spouse, but all the brass tacks of business and things, it's like, that could not be the most effective, or it might vary from marriage to marriage of like, oh yeah, I want to know everything. And others like, you know what? I don't need to know how the sausage is made. I just want to know that it's being made.
I like that first step of whether it's talking to a wall or journaling or calling somebody up. Yeah. There's this power in verbalizing it. And I for sure used to think that there were such things as forbidden thoughts. Like that's a thought process. Like that's the matrix, the blue pill or the red pill. Like I'm not allowed to even think about what the outcomes of taking that pill are and to entertain that idea. And as humans, when we resist things like that, they generally become more persistent in our lives, and those thoughts come back up instead of saying, okay, if I were to take that pill, what would this result in? If I were to walk away from my family's business, if I were to step away from this decade or 2-decade relationship, what would that look like? And then you can actually have the space to say, oh, this is what it would look like. I would do this and this. Is that the outcome that I want?
Yeah.
And then you can address it from a place of every thought is neutral and there's no power or force behind a thought. Action is what creates force, and our actions come from thoughts combined with emotion.
Yeah.
And we're putting way more emotion behind our thoughts by resisting them than we are allowing them to play out. So I love just talk to a wall, journal, write down, call a buddy, whatever it is, just start vocalizing what it is that you have in your mind.
Yeah. In regards to the blue pill and the red pill, like when I was with my family business, leaving there wasn't an option for me. Like I was so locked in and almost to like being blind to a lot of stuff. Like my wife would come in, check in with me like, hey, so why don't you look at other options or this or that? And I would even like think about it or consider it. And so I think another step is just getting to that point of exploring and understand like, okay, let that go and understand your options. But kind of going back to, my back's against the wall, the one thing that the straw that broke the camel's back is like when my dad's like, hey, I'm going to be giving the agency 100% to your brother. I was like, all right. But that was the only thing really. And I put up with a lot of crap up to that point. I kind of have like a regret of like, oh, I should have left earlier. My brother left 2 years before I did, and I thought he was an idiot. But then we both kind of joined the same camp and had left. But I feel like the timing was right. I guess the unfortunate part is that I was going to stick it out, even despite all the challenges that I was facing. And I also, in the process, which I'm pretty bummed about, I lost my voice and didn't really stand up for certain things. It was a toxic work environment. So
one thing that you mentioned was that, which I fall into the category all the time, I think a lot of people do, is you judged your brother for leaving. You said, oh, he's an idiot.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that's prevented me from being vulnerable is I've judged other people's decisions. I think that's like judge not, be not judged. Like for me, that hits home so hard when I'm like, oh, now I have the full picture, or I'm in that boat and I'm resistant to do this thing that's going to be beneficial for me because I know how I've judged others who have gone down this specific path. So as a helpful reminder to me, I must have made it more difficult for you to make that decision, having already placed judgment on your brother who made that decision when you were in it. What kind of insurance do you do? What's your specialty? Who's your ideal client? How do they contact you?
So independent commercial insurance broker, specializing in property and casualty, bunch of big words. I've been doing this for 16, 17 years now. What I realized over the years is that I enjoy the people side of the business. So I love working with business owners, getting to know them, understand their story, what makes them tick, how they got to where they are. There's so much wisdom that I can glean from people and clients. The different types of policies ranges from liability, property, work, commercial auto, umbrella, cyber, directors and officers, employment practice liability. And then besides my network, I like to work within manufacturing, pest control, construction. That can range from HVAC, electrical, painting, commercial buildings, and then like assisted living, home health care. So like a pretty wide range of industries.
Business size or ideal client?
Yeah, so 20 million revenue and up is kind of the threshold and the focus right now on size of companies. Yeah.
Cool. You saved us. We were in a pinch when we started working with you. We made a switch and we almost lost. They are our largest client. Fortunately, we didn't. Thanks to you guys saving the day. But
thanks, Court. Yeah.
I think it's brokers. Similar brokers have relationships with similar insurance agencies, and so it can become commoditized, and who you're working with becomes a differentiator, and we've loved working with you.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Thanks for all the help. Okay, last question for you. I think this is the most important question to ask ourselves on a regular basis. So I'm going to ask you, if you were sitting across from I'm Travis Milward 3 years in the future, what would I tell you? What advice would I have for you? What would I tell you to focus on or do or not do?
I think the advice would be like freaking go for it, man. Don't hold back. Quit second guessing yourself. Like you got this in the bag. So that's more like on the professional side. And then on the personal side, it's like with family and kids. The pocket that I'm in with my kids, it's challenging for me. I've got 6 at home, ages 19 to 9, 4 teenagers, and the teenagers are a handful, and I'm doing my absolute best to teach them and not lose my cool. And it's like the advice would probably be just be more patient and understanding. I can be a stickler on a lot of stuff, and I think some of the things I can be a stickler on are pretty small and minute, and I don't think it's worth it. And maybe it's like, hey, just there's so much moving, like bustling around, going from one thing to another, going to school, going to sports, and it's like I should just kind of pump the brakes and be like, hey, go do a one-on-one with your son. Go to dinner, go to lunch, sit down, talk, hang out, be there, versus being the militant father who's like, get home by this time for curfew, and here's your consequence. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, I guess.
Love it. Dude, this has been awesome. Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, thanks, Court.
Anything you wish I would have asked that I didn't? Or any last words?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. This has been awesome.